As I was checking on any updates about Australia and a potential for a lawsuit against the church for tax evasion, I came across the Sydney Morning Herald that apparently covered it first thing on April 3rd, 2022, 5 a.m. Unfortunately, Mormons want to run and hide when the church is caught being bad. And many Mormons on my channel think that they can just simply deny and put a thumbs down, and that makes the church true. That shows me, sending me hate comments and death threats to show how much they love me, giving me religious freedom. The church is true. You have to live in reality, Mormons. If you keep running and hiding from the truth about the church, you're going to have a massive faith crisis. I keep warning you about this, and you just don't care. You harden your hearts even more. So, Ben Schneider's Keith Fenstermacher went on his mission to Australia, and so I was concerned that I was going to go to some Colorado location in the United States as a result of I think another one went to Italy or Spain. But maybe two guys went to those locations, but I'm pretty sure the one guy didn't go. But regardless. So, this is what Ben reported. The Mormon Church has been accused of engaging in significant tax evasion in Australia, allowing its adherents to collect hundreds of millions of dollars in tax exemptions that are not lawfully available to followers of other religions. And if you didn't know, crime organizations get taken down for tax evasion. It's the thing that the government had figured out how to finally take down crime organizations with. And so this is significant. Even if you've never watched The Rat Pack or any of the R-rated movies, because you've been good Mormons and been idol worshippers, staying away from exposure of what the church is doing, like The Godfather. Some of its tax activities are run through a shell company. With no paid employees. They could be in breach. Could be. This really frustrates me of our news, is that because they can get sued if they were to say which is in violation or in breach of Australian tax laws, they have to say could be, apparently, or possibly, maybe. No, it either is or it isn't. It doesn't require a judge to determine whether it is or not, or a vote of a jury of peers. The crimes are set out in law. If you disobey them, you're in violation. But because it's humans involved in the court process, certain elites can get away with crime. That doesn't mean they didn't commit the crime. That's the big frustration in our American society. But the news needs to call it what it is. They need to report the news. and all they have to do is quote the law, and so it's not apparent. It is a breach of Australian tax laws. Just say it. An investigation by the Sunday Age and the Sun Herald has found. The investigation has uncovered how the Utah-based Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints took out the that makes it a nickname, and Jesus is angry. Commonly called the Mormons. Appears to us. See, the world doesn't care. And Bill Mayer, Mormons, the Mormon Church. The world doesn't care. They're not going to call you by the full name. That was Nelson pulling a stunt to tamper with the algorithms of the internet and social media platforms. Because there was a lot of pictures from a certain website that they needed to have disappear. And they shut down that guy's website as well. Appears to have structured itself internationally to minimize tax for its adherents and maximize benefits for itself, in particular Australia and Canada. So Canada is also involved, huh? This is interesting. And so, yes, I'm sure you've heard in the news how Amazon and other multi-billion-dollar companies are getting away with not paying taxes. Well, they're a religion. They don't pay taxes. They're tax exempt. But nonetheless, apparently in Australia requires taxation in that regard. I don't know tax law. I wish he would report what the tax law is so that I could find out. And I think I did, but or at least learn the penalties regarding tax evasion law, and I did the video talking about it. 10 years in prison. In Australia, the church has ensured that donations and tithing, which are good for you, he separated them. James Huntsman, are you listening? What happened to your appeal, by the way? Which are not tax deductible. So yeah, not tax deductible. Are routed through a charitable trust to gain 100% tax deductibility. Oops. Mormons are required to pay. He knows. He knows. Why don't Mormons know? James, are you listening? Are you paying attention? The world knows what the church is up to when they learn about it. But Mormons are in the dark in their little bubble world. And it's gonna burst, and you're gonna be in shock. You'll go through a faith crisis. James, of their gross income. Oh, gee, I thought it was 10% of our interest annually, which means we have to own our own business. If we don't own our own business and we're working for someone who does own their own business, making them their lifestyle, we don't pay tithing. But a certain prophet said, no, we're changing this. A sufficient financial impost on followers. They know! An impost is a tax or similar compulsory payment. They know! Why don't Mormons know? Guys, it's a protection racket. Australia knows. Ben figured it out. Apparently the son and the other thing figured it out. Why didn't James figure this out? I sent the lawyers a letter explaining this to them to help James out. Nope. We know better than Travis. And they still called it a donation in their appeal. Dear God, guys. Are you just in it for the money? Playing James Huntsman for a joke? You need to get new lawyers, James. You need to start calling it an impost. Australia is unusual among English-speaking countries in that it does not allow tax deductions for tithing or church donations. An interesting fact, we have a good cell relative in Australia that my dad had been in contact with back when I was in contact with my family. That was like 50 years ago, 20 years ago. He was working on a Book of Mormon movie using Australia as the backdrop and was unsuccessful. The funding that was required for it and all that, he never got it finished, obviously. There was that other Mormon who did the episode Book of Mormon movie. I walked out of it. I have never walked out of a movie in my life, and I walked out of that one. I was disgusted and horrified. It was taking Mormons further down the paths of darkness about the truth of the Book of Mormon. And I wasn't going to sit through that anymore. That was just horrifying. And the cartoons, yes, those were cute and funny, even though doctrinally incorrect and not true to the Book of Mormon. But the movie version, oh my God. And if you didn't know, the church also has a cattle ranch and other stuff out in Australia as well. In case you didn't know, the Mormon Church has structured itself to maximize the tax benefit and reports that it spends up to 70% of its Australian income on charity. You have to actually be doing it to claim it. Globally, the church spends less than 1% of its income on charity. I did the videos. It's far less than 1%. You need to start adding zeros. That's why I do the videos talking about the widow and her 2 mites. That's the church. They are the Pharisees and bragging about giving 2 mites as charity. We're following the example of the widow and giving 2 mites. Oh my God. They know. Dear God, they know. It's all a smoke and mirrors thing. Claims barrister Dr. Neville Rothschild, QC. I'm not familiar with those titles. Who had senior roles in the church, including working as its representative to the European Union until 2018. Okay, so he was former Mormon. Interesting. And so was he a member of the 70? Let us find out. Neville Rochow. LDS Area 70. Neville Rochow. Yeah, Pacific Area 70. Neville Rochow, South Carolina. Barrister. Or that's New Zealand news. This was back in 2014. Let's click and find out. Mr. Neville Rochow. Okay, he's on the left. Okay. Latter-day Saint group comprised Elder Jeffrey D. Cummings, Pacific Area 70, Neville Rochow, SC, Barrister, National Director of Interfaith Relations, and Elder David G. Moore, a Public Affairs Specialist. And that's that with that. Read more at the Australian News Edition. It says how the church is organized. Watch on YouTube. That's interesting. Let's do some fun stuff. We'll play some background music. Isn't that fun? Don't you want elevator music more often? So yeah, he is a former Area 70. It is confirmed. That might be him at an older age. He claims the church is taking it off the back of tax-paying Australians. Yeah, I've been telling you guys about this all the time. They paid Russia for the war with your money. Dr. Roach, I wish I had some kind of a little thing that I can click on it and hear how it's pronounced. Rochow said, the church spent little on charity. Tried next to nothing. They don't set up schools, don't set up hospitals, only give 1,000 sleeping bags to 4 million refugee Ukrainians. And don't have homeless shelters, don't have places for women to escape when they have bad marriages. They have a phone number for the bishops to call to protect the church from the women and the lawsuits that are to ensue. A tax structure has meant that since 2015, Australian adherents have been able to draw on 400 million in tax deductions not available to followers of other religions or denominations. The Mormon Church spokesman did not respond to written requests about this discrepancy. They run and hide. No comment. But said the church operated in accordance with tax laws of the criminal underground. In the mid-2010s, Dr. Rochow was involved in a Mormon-instigated econometric study used to justify its tax status. and to ensure that religious trust properties of other churches were not taxed. Soon after, it started to direct substantial donations and tithing through its charitable trust, a decision he was not involved in. Before that, in a submission it made to Treasury, the church said it spent just $36,000 a year on average on charitable donations between 1985 and 2010. There has been little to no growth in the 61,600 Mormon adherents in Australia over the past decade that he could explain the reported 2,000-fold increase in charitable giving. Keith, can you explain this? Did you not help convert anybody in Australia? Are you still living in Boise now? Keith, where are you? Are you not wanting to be known by me? Or know that you know me? Keith. He was the only person I could really hang out with in high school. I'm pretty much the only Mormon in my school. Wayne Mills hung out with the surfer smoker drinkers, and so it was more of the preppy surfers. Things were weird back in the 80s. That's all I gotta say. He had a VW bug that caught fire on a regular basis. And as I was inspired to watch Transformers, yeah, how funny, Bumblebee. But nonetheless, Keith Fenstermacher went to the rival school, Corona High. And so I didn't spend much time with him other than church and seminary. And so there were occasions where we'd go see an R-rated movie. Or such shenanigans as us evil California Mormons would do. So, yeah, he, a good guy. I'm sure he's still faithful. But, yeah, apparently he failed as a missionary. That's what I'm being told here. I failed too. I can only count the Rincon family, which is just a couple. Baby Seychelles doesn't count. Yeah, she was so cute. That $70 million a year in close to the amount the global church, whose strongest following is in the United States, itself says it gives each year on average throughout the world, according to its own annual reports. And so they've got a Mormon Inc. chart here that I had to do snapshots to that I'll have to cut and paste because it's bigger than the page will allow, and mostly because of the read for free, register or log in now to unlock more articles. So if you watch a second or read a second article from the Sydney Morning Herald, they're going to force you to pay. So I get this one for free. Aren't you lucky? And you can see the Jesus idol god coming out of what Nelson said was the tomb, but they've taken out the cornerstone. Thank goodness Jesus is the chief cornerstone of the cornerstone. I will never let him down on that. never let him go. That was just the worst attempt to translate among the let God prevail crap that he put up, which came from Mormons working on the footnotes. They put it in there. Avraham Gileadi was rejected with his Hebrew translation for the footnotes, and they put let God prevail, and Nelson then perpetuated it over the pulpit of conference, and then I've humiliated him ever since. And they came out with a reply to my first and doubled down, saying they got it from the footnotes. Guys, do you not understand? You have no justifiable basis. You have apparently not been informed by the prophets who I am. Didn't the prophets tell you who I am? I worked on the revision of the footnotes in the 2000s. So, I have Australian Mormons at the top, with a line down to LDS Charitable Trust Fund. There's a line coming from the left, $100 million a year in tithing donations. And then a line goes down again to LDS Charities, Sydney, Australia. No paid staff, donations flow to dozens of countries. $70 million a year, with a little thing, asterisk, trust fund donated $15 million, building and fast offering funds, balance was saved. And then you have a line coming, elbowing from the right, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Salt Lake City, Utah, with an American flag rather than an Australian flag, into the LDS Charities, Sydney, Australia. Telling you, and you don't believe me. And then LDS Charities Australia goes to Burkina Faso, Bangladesh, Haiti. I've lost my Haitian accent. It's been too many years since I've been on my mission to New York, Iraq, Liberia, and Venezuela. LDS Charities Australia has no paid staff, Australian website, expenses, or infrastructure to run what purports to be one of the country's major charities, collecting more in individual donations than Oxfam, Beyond Blue, or Caritas Australia. That would be Charitas, the Greek from which it comes from, Caritas, to give. The Catholic Church's international aid charity. It runs in parallel with the Utah-based LDS Latter-day Saint Charities, which apparently directs the church's charitable spending throughout the world and includes all its senior staff, management, and infrastructure. A church spokesman denied LDS Charities Australia was run by Utah-based Latter-day Saint Charities and said, Nelson got up and confessed he did. It funded programs through other charities. Oh, money laundering. Yes, thank you for explaining money laundering to us. You're already exposed for the protection racket. And now you confess, oh no, it's not run by Utah-based charities, it's laundered through other charities, including Red Cross. Yeah, Red Cross. Yeah, oh yeah, we gave $1 million. And so 10 million is 1 0, 100 million is 2 zeros, and then billion, 10 billion, 100 billion, and 1 trillion. That's 5 zeros. 0.0000001%, if we were to use that figure. So yes, less than 1%. Water for People and World Food Program, allowing it to keep costs low. Oh my God! All decisions about which projects are funded are made right here in Australia, the spokesman said. The programs it cited were also funded by its Utah-based charities. World Vision, 144 million. Medicine Sans Frontières, 97 million. LDS Charities Australia, the 70 million. Oxfam, 33 million. Plan International, 22 million. Beyond Blue, 21 million. Caritas Internationalis, Nationalitas, 17 million. And I'm sure it's the Australian dollar rather than the American dollar, assuming that it's the Sydney Morning Herald. University of Tampa professor of sociology. I did the Sociology of Mormonism video the other day this week. Ryan Cragen, an expert on Mormonism. I doubt that. Nonetheless, let's see what he has to say. Said it was inconceivable that the church was making significant global charitable decisions from Australia. It's a stunningly hierarchical religion. Did you get that from D. Michael Quinn's books? Professor Cragen said. So, any big decisions like that are going to be made in Salt Lake City. Yeah, the prophets. They're all on the board. Every decision comes from them. That's why they're in big trouble. It's not their tax accountant. Tax accountants have to get permission from the prophets. In 2019, the Australian Tax Office made a binding ruling that for an Australian charity to have deductible gift recipients status, which allows tax write-offs for donors, it must have Australia as the focal point of the DGR, deductible gift recipient status, in a legal or organizational sense. And the church isn't. So, see, it's not accused, it is violating. Christian Seabout, a charities expert at Swinburne University Center for Social Impact, speaking in general terms, said the DGR rule meant the operations and management decisions of a charity need to be made from Australia, not from Utah, not from the leaders of the church. Yep. Church cannot function in the world if the world will not allow it to function from Utah. It can, of course, engage and consult with partner organizations outside Australia. Yeah, they'd have to redesign the whole administration of the church such that the Area 70 would become Australian leadership in Australia to conform to the law so that the charity is centered from Australia and only for Australia, rather than funneling it to the crime boss in Utah through the pyramid scheme. It has to be the Australian Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is what they're saying. That could raise issues under our tax laws. So yeah, I've still not heard anything about actual lawsuits filed yet, but this is damaging. If you aren't understanding what's going on here, as they seem to understand what's going on here, this is damaging to the church. I doubt they'll be able to get away with pulling out of Australia, so that all the churches get confiscated and Mormons cease to be Mormon in Australia, such that if they want to continue to be Mormon, they have to leave Australia. It seems likely, according to the laws that I reviewed, that they will indict the church and call for the extradition of the prophets to Australia, and the United States will hand them over, and that's 10 years, because of the way the church has structured their organization like a crime organization. In fact, they actually designed it, and the crime organization modeled it after theirs. It was Brigham Young who changed Joseph Smith's administration into a crime organization. So Mormonism is a U.S. religious movement that began in the 19th century and has become incredibly wealthy. Yeah, and you forgot to mention that the United States shut them down, put them in debt, but tax imposts pulled it out of debt. A Washington Post investigation in 2020 revealed the church was secretly running a U.S. $100 billion investment fund. There it is. It was actually December 1999 by the whistleblower. Ensign Peak Advisors, that was accumulating vast tax-free wealth by investing in huge funds. Chevron, Visa, Apple, Microsoft, Google. Which means YouTube. And so yes, they are influencing YouTube because of their stock investment to make sure that certain channels are silenced on YouTube. Professor Cragen said the church, for a time, disclosed its charitable giving. Yeah, sort of, not really. It's like their membership numbers from conference. It was very vague in general. And I do remember the guy getting up and only saying, it conforms with all tax laws. That was pretty much it. Just a one-sentence thing. And he sits back down, and then the next guy gets up, and then the next guy. That was it. They weren't really talking about their charitable giving in terms of numbers. But you could find out, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. I never knew how much money the church had. I never learned it from conference. Which equates to less than 1% of its revenue. It is shocking how little they give. Yeah, it's called crime. They're criminal. They don't love. They're using religion as a front for their criminal operation. Just like the Sopranos, Tony Soprano was in charge of sanitation. And so he would go around to the different companies each month, say, oh, it's time to pay the bill for sanitation and a little extra. The impost. But on the flip side, this is the part that's really interesting. They advertise it every single time, and that's where the ex-Mormon in me is like, that's exactly what Jesus said not to do. And the Book of Mormon, lest you forget, the Book of Mormon calls it priestcraft, and it's a bad thing. The Book of Mormon condemns the church. The Book of Mormon identifies the church as the great and abominable church, The Book of Mormon is so true, and yet this church has turned the Book of Mormon into a literal history to make it not true. That's what Brigham Young did. He turned Joseph Smith into a Christian, turned the Book of Mormon into literal history, and all Mormons are screwed up. He said many of the church's current leaders, called apostles, prophets, technically, because they're first presidency counselors, who are also apostles, but are prophets, seers, revelators. Again, Brigham Young changed that. That was not Joseph Smith's plan. Only he and his brother Hiram were prophets, seers, and revelators. Joseph Smith was the translator with the key of Moses for the first presidency, not Peter. And Hiram was patriarch after Dad died in 1840. Had background section 107, verse 91 and 92. And you got to scroll down further for the other stuff. Or is it 10? No. Yeah, it's further down that one. The International Church, he said, was run like a multinational corporation. Yeah, crime organization, which practices all but identical around the world, with practices. Okay. According to Cragen, the church is likely to milk the system for every tax deduction they can, and they're very, very good at it. Yep, tax exempt. And they like to brag that they didn't take any of the fraudulent money that was stolen from the COVID relief funding, but they got it back through other means. Don't think that they're innocent on that. And so now everybody's finding out what I already knew was going to happen. You have Trump in charge of it. What do you think's going to happen? There's going to be rip-offs, scams, frauds. Senior ex-Mormon Simon Southerton has been involved in a complaint to the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission about the church's tax practices. A geneticist, literal history of the Book of Mormon again. Yep. He made a break with the church in the 2000s after he found that its origin story of some Native Americans being descended from Jews was incorrect. Yeah, they're from Egyptians through China. The big problem was I was a bishop, akin to a pastor, Dr. Southerton said. I went in overnight absolutely knowing that the Book of Mormon was a 19th century fabrication. But you never learned what it is. It's not just a fabrication. There's something to it. And you didn't bother to do the continued research to figure it out. You just said, it's not a literal history. That's it. I quit. So what is it? You didn't find out. You gave up when you found out it wasn't the literal history that we'd been lied to about. He wrote a book about the issue and was later excommunicated, because that shows the church is true. He said it was implausible that $70 million a year was being donated through Australia. Okay, we're coming to an end here. The Sunday Age and Sun Herald investigation has also found that in Canada, the church's entire charitable giving is laundered to 3 campuses of Mormon-run university, the BYUs, Hawaii, Idaho, and the central one in the U.S. The sum of Canadian 70 million, which is about $3. It's okay. So 70 million, was it? 1, 2, 3. Wow. Wow. $55,702 or thousand. $55,702,326.77 equivalent. So yeah, 70 million drops in the American currency. No. Well, yeah, it's Canadian. 75 million a year appears to be lawful, as the campuses of Brigham Young University have several hundred Canadian students. Yeah, I made the mistake of marrying one. The Canada Revenue Agency said it was prevented by confidentiality provisions from commenting on specific cases. It said any donations must be made to qualified charity recipients under Canadian law. And Alberta has dominant Mormon presence, and so it would have to go to the federal Canadian government for disposition. So, yeah, lest you forget, the church is a crime organization. Australia knows it.